Hey, what's up, everybody? BDL44 coming at you another video. All right, so here's another basketball conversation. Clippers. From what I understand, they are actually interested in maybe moving on from Paul George and Kawhi Leonard after all. Now, if you've been following me lately, you know I'm a huge proponent to that. I have been wanting them to break this team up ever since they put it together for my own personal reasons as a Laker fan, but also because I don't believe in what they've put together. Not necessarily the duo of Kawhi and Paul George. They can win in a nutshell, but just it's run its course. They didn't build around it properly. And the way it's set up right now without their assets, because they gave up so much for Paul George, it doesn't look like they can build around them properly going forward at all. So my thing is, move on. Try to get as many assets for those players as possible so that you don't have this problem anymore. So that you literally don't have this problem anymore. And that is ultimately what I think Steve Ballmer and his crew are coming around to believing now. From what I understand, they've been communicating with the Portland Trail Blazers and possibly, who was it? It was another team. I think it was, I don't want to give y'all the wrong team, but the Portland Trail Blazers is definitely one of the teams that they're thinking about sending Paul George to. And from what I just read, they might be open to moving on from Kawhi Leonard as well. Now, if this were to happen, obviously it would be the end of an era. Be something that I think would be unprecedented in some ways, moving on from these type of talent after giving up so much to acquire them. But at the end of the day, they got several years out of it. They weren't able to keep those guys on the floor. And at the end of the day, they got a new building opening up, which has been my biggest argument. I'm walking toward that building as we speak, about 6 blocks from it. You have to consider what type of talent is going to be opening that building at the start of that ceremony. At the end of the day, that's one of the most state-of-the-art buildings in the whole world. You know, one of the most well put together pieces of art that we have in California that they're doing right now. So it's like, we got to be honest about what the future holds for a building like that for the Clippers, who are going to be the sole basketball team playing there. You have an opportunity to take something that has value and turn it into something that could really work for your future. But if you don't necessarily capture that moment, it gets some value for these guys before they go into the twilight of their career and can't really be received for anything. You definitely find yourself having lost this opportunity. And that's what you don't want if you're the LA Clippers. If you're the LA Clippers, you want to take what you have, Kawhi and Paul George, and get the pick equity necessary so that you can meet the timeline of the building being open and having that young talent in place to be exciting at that same time. So that's really what it's about in my mind. You want to put yourself in the most advantageous position to be able to open that building with attractive talent. And you cannot do that if you're continuing to go forward with less assets. It's not about Kawhi and PG being done necessarily. It's just being in a cap stranglehold without pick equity to give you the flexibility to make your assets more valuable. And this is what we talk about all the time. When you don't have your picks, people can lowball you for what you have. You know what I mean? So in this situation, the Clippers don't have to necessarily get the best return for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard right now, because of the fact I can look at them and say, okay, you're trying to restart your rebuild, so this is something that you have to do in order for you to find that flexibility. I'm not going to throw in such and such and such and such, because quite honestly, that's how desperate you are. I don't have to do it for you. And those type of things, I find, as I assess the market, always make it so that no matter how well the talent is playing or how bad the talent is playing, it's still going to affect how the value of that talent is viewed. Because at the end of the day, I'm only going to do for you what you have the leverage to demand. If I'm on the other side of the trade table, and this is where teams like the Clippers run into, you got pieces that you want to either hold on to for dear life so that you can have some relevancy, or have to get rid of and start from scratch, as to which you don't know if you're going to find the talent going through the draft. So that's the risk. The risk is the fact that when you have draft picks, you don't know what they're turning into. And so as a result, you're more flexible than a team that gets rid of all of that concern by bringing themselves superstars that can otherwise be as good as some of these super teams like to make their teams be. You don't need those superstars to make it easier on you so that the market is more difficult on you in response to that. You see, you take the easier path, now the market has to make it harder for you. And so if you don't have a necessary understanding concept of that, you're going to get beat up by that market. That market's going to kick your butt a lot of the time. And I think that's what we're finding that a lot of these owners are running into. A guy like Ballmer came in thinking that it was going to be fantastic bringing in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, only to find out he can't put nothing around them that's good enough to make them win. You know what I mean? And that poison pill is something that new owners keep finding. Now Matt Ishbia is going to find the same thing. A-Rod found the same thing. You cannot betray what's in place to otherwise keep everybody in line. Because when you do that, you find that it's meant to destroy you when you do it. It's going to protect itself. So that's what I say. Just stay away from that aspect of it. You know what I mean? Rather than put yourself in a position to not have what you need and then be embarrassed by the fact that you can't bring these guys stars, know that it's set up for you not to be able to bring these guys stars. Know that it's set up for you not to be able to succeed in doing it, so that you dream up your championship team another way. And maybe that's not good enough for certain owners. Maybe they think if they can just slap certain names together, it'd be good enough and they'll make the money up that way. Fine, but you also run the risk of being run out of town when you find out schematically you can't win, and the fans find that out as well. Everybody's mad at you. And so it's like, that can affect business just as bad. It's not having 3 stars in a place of mind where you want 3 stars. Whatever you think the worst case scenario is for not having those 3 stars, you're going to make up for by not making it so that those 3 stars look any good when they're on your roster. So Brooklyn found that out. All these teams keep doing it, and none of them end up happy about it when they do. And it just gets to a point where fans like myself have a voice. Try to educate them on how to get around it. Maybe bring yourself more G League type of talent. Infuse more of an emphasis on player development. That's your way out of that, or around that. And I've yet to see a team effectively do that with balance to having their super team and having the young talent to make up for it on cheaper value. It's just we've yet to see it. So that's the problem, is a lot of times they want to do this, but they don't have the solution in place to keep it from going left. And so it does. It just simply does. And there is a way to do it, but you got to be really good at finding talent in very cheap areas. You got to be good at finding players that don't cost a lot but can still do a lot for you. And when you have that, oh man, then you can take more risk with your salary cap. Then you can take more chances. So that's what these teams have yet to figure out. And that's what we talk about all the time, player development. And hopefully they understand it, that how important it is when they want to take these gambles. So, yeah. And in the meantime, I'm looking at my own team, the Lakers. And as I said yesterday, we're one of the teams that has good player development. We're one of the teams who we can find something out of nothing more times than a lot of teams who would otherwise do that. And we have I guess you could say the reason to build a super team, because we are the Lakers. It should be easy. It should be easy to bring superstar talent to you. And not only that, but you also have the need to be reminded of the fact that the Lakers name alone, without assets and stars, doesn't necessarily bring you free agents, because we went through that stint where we couldn't get LaMarcus Aldridge, Carmelo Anthony, and all those guys in their prime. We were trying to get them, couldn't get them. And so in these situations, you look up and you understand that it's only because you didn't have stars in place that would make it so that you looked as if other stars would want to come to you, and it wasn't, incumbent upon you to get those stars, so that you wouldn't have that problem anymore. So we have to keep that balance as well as the Lakers, to say that if we strip it all down, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be able to attract the stars that we otherwise want to attract. But if we have our stuff in place, we can be more attractive than other teams who have their stuff in place. And I think that's what we learned. So maybe that keeps people hesitant on starting to rebuild. Maybe that keeps people from wanting to only build normally, as the NBA would otherwise want us to, under the tax apron. But Jeannie Buss has already made it clear she doesn't want to go over that tax apron. And so there will be no super team on this side of town. But what I can say is the Lakers are probably more likely to be able to be successful at this point because of the emphasis on player development, and because of the fact that they have contracts that could be an exorbitant amount, that otherwise can be traded for a superstar. And it wouldn't hurt the Lakers' infrastructure or their role players to manifest that value in their cap space. And I think that that is a very interesting dynamic. It's a very interesting dynamic that allows the Lakers to have less of a risk in many different ways this particular season in building a super team if they were to dream up that way. It's like Jeanie has told all of us not to go over the tax apron, but this is legitimately the most reasonable situation to add a third star that I've seen in several different instances. You know, I look at the Nets and said that was ill-advised. I look at the Lakers. Last time I did it, we did it. I said that was ill-advised. I look at Phoenix. That's ill-advised. But the Lakers, because you have D'Angelo Russell at potentially $30 million at 2 years, which should be attractive if somebody wants to trade it for it, which may not have nothing to do with assessing the player, but more so about the attractiveness of that contract and what it can mean when they want to trade it, all right? With respect to what the value of the contract is, that's supposedly a good contract. Even if you get it at 30 mil, 2 years, it's the years on that amount that is tradable, which is what we're referring to. When you look at Bamba, him at 10, Measley, 16, now you're looking at a situation where, as I said yesterday in one of my videos, the Lakers are freeing up $56 million. $56 million in players that, in theory, with respect to those guys, the Lakers don't even want. So it's like if ever there was a situation, ever, where you could actually build a super team and not worry about moving the pieces and not necessarily worried about where the other players are going to come from because they can be played on lesser contracts with our player development, I think the Los Angeles Lakers are in a firm position to be very pleased if they take that risk and get the right player next to AD and Bron. Dame Lillard, maybe one of the two guards in Atlanta, Trae Young or DeJounte Murray. Maybe you can aim higher than that. Maybe if you want to do something crazy, go get you a Brandon Ingram, bring him back. You know, if you want to play Kyle Kuzma and bring him back, it's possible you can give him some of that money. Like, these are things we weren't thinking about. Now, obviously, depth for us is something we like. We want to get Naz Reid. We want to keep our 17th pick, maybe even trade for Porzingis if we give it up, trade back. It's a lot of things the Lakers are talking about that seem reasonable to me. But the one thing that I'm starting to warm up to is the fact that we could take that $56 million, bring ourselves some crazy superstar talent, and then still have the role players like Max Christie, like various other guys on affordable contracts. Now, maybe that risk you keep in some of them guys you're trying to keep, though, depending on what type of restricted free agency contracts that they sign. You're talking about Rui Hachimura. If somebody overpays him, now you got to match that. You know what I mean? If somebody overpays Austin, of course, you're going to match that. But if for some reason you're dreaming up bringing some crazy stuff together like Zion Williamson or something like that, if you're dreaming up something crazy, this is the 1 year where I'm saying that's $56 million of players you don't want and a bunch of guys on affordable contracts that you can use to make up a betterment of your bench. You can build it better than most right now, Jeanie Buss. Not to say that I would. Not to say that's really how I think we should build, because I do think it's a poison pill. But when you look at the Lakers situation and how they're trying to win now, and you add a big-time talent, $56 million, and still have his role players around to make the team decent, you might put yourself in a position to be better than Phoenix or whoever else you might think is a champion. I don't know if you get up there with Jokic and them, I'm not certain, but that's what you're aiming for. So that's what I'm thinking about, man. I don't know if the Lakers would be willing to do that. Like I said, if restricted free agents may cost all that. Somebody may give Austin $100 million and he's stuck trying to match that. But in my mind, there's a very good chance that the LA Lakers may change their mind before the end of this preseason, or before the end of this offseason rather, and actually bring them a Trae Young or bring them somebody that's going to cost them a lot of money to keep, with the intention of knowing LeBron James is leaving and potentially thinking that they're not going to have the value necessary to draw talent. So you bring that third star here knowing he's going to be your second star when Bron leaves. That's why you do it. Because you know LeBron James coming off the books, as to what you're likely not going to get nothing for him, because you're going to let him retire in uniform. So what this does, when you bring yourself this super, quote-unquote, super team this year, is allow you to have both AD and that player on contract upon circumstances becoming that way. More assets in place. It's why I ultimately gave the Phoenix Suns a pretty good grade in regards to acquiring Bradley Beal, because at the end of the day, they gave up nothing to get him, and that value comes and manifests out of nowhere. As to which you find yourself being able to say, okay, I can let go of Kevin Durant and still have 2 stars in place. This is that exact dynamic that I'm referring to right now. Now you have those stars in place to where if Bron just disappears, I could trade AD and still have that star that somebody may want to come play with, that allows for me to not be in the dumps like we talked about 5 minutes ago with the Los Angeles Lakers, not having nobody in place that would make LaMarcus Aldridge or Carmelo Anthony want to be here. That player then comes to be your only star and gives you the flexibility and leverage to trade AD for picks and to let LeBron James walk while you still got your Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, whoever you bring in, Zion, whoever's going to be at $56 million. And so that's where my head is, man. I know the Houston Rockets want to get older. Maybe they want to free up some cap space in some other ways. They got a couple players I would love to receive, young players. I don't know what they would be willing to do. I don't know if those players would match in salary if we were to try to sign and trade or extend any of those guys. But I look at guys like, who they got? Josh Christopher, all these different players they got. Kevin Martin. Not Kevin Martin, but Kenyon Martin's son, I can't think his name. But these different players that they're probably not going to use because they're going to draft people on top of them, these are the people that the Lakers need to be trying to target in 3-team deals and things like that would ultimately let them move salary of $56 million. I'm not thinking about guys on these super exorbitant contracts. I'm thinking about the guys who are going to be worth that tomorrow. Guys that we can see being on the verge of that now. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how my mind works. But even if yours thinks differently, maybe you want to bring in a Jaylen Brown at that price. You can do it. Maybe if you want to make that player Karl Anthony Towns, you got the funds to do it. And so those are things that the Lakers are capable of doing right now. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. I don't know if it makes all the sense in the world to do that. But you put yourself in a position to be able to have less of a risk this season with these specific circumstances, with those specific contracts being for which something you don't care to have, something that's super valued high in dollar amount, but are also sweet enough for others to say, you know what, I'll take it. I can do something good with that. Perfect. And that's why I think Rob Pelinka is doing things that I'm really feeling right now. Some of his old moves have shaken out so that what we have looks like this. That's crazy great, man. Crazy great. When I consider what the D'Lo contract now represents for us, if we re-sign him to a small deal, now when I really fully understand that, it really helps us in a sign and trade situation. It really helps us if we can get his value up. We start the season with him and he doesn't get hurt, which is the risk I'm worried about. But that's what it looks like when you have a Bamba contract at 10 or a Beasley contract at 16. It would have been great if Beasley would have been playing well enough so that contract could really look as good as it needs to look. But even so, it's a stretchable one. Sort of like Chris Paul, it doesn't even really matter. He's not playing well. Somebody just going to want to get that $16 million off their books with contracts they don't want anymore. For example, we can go get us a Tobias Harris if we want to, in theory. Not to say that they see him as a player they just have to get rid of. But I'm looking at contracts that are tweener contracts to guys that are losing value, so to speak, that maybe their team would probably be best to get rid of, even if they love the player themselves. That's one of them. If you want to add a player like that to your situation, you technically have the cash to do it and the attractive trade pieces to make something like that happen. Nobody's thinking about it, but James Harden, he could legitimately end up a Laker in this situation. No different than Trae Young or anybody else that would be at $56 million. They could do it. Not to say I'd want to, hell no, not me, but it can be done. So that's really the purpose of what it is I'm here to say to everybody. Normally I'm walking down the street talking about other stuff, but today I got basketball on my mind. And I'm telling y'all that with 1 day left before the draft, it could be some unprecedented movement coming up. Super unprecedented movement. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about teams that are doing so much, try to build themselves up to beat Denver, Los Angeles Lakers have yet to do anything to respond to that. And we got swept by Denver in the Western Conference Finals. If anybody needs to be responding to the changes being made around building a super team or a team that can beat Denver, it should probably be us. And so that's what I'm looking at in the situation. My thinking is that the LA Lakers may respond to what Phoenix just did in our very own way. Not to say that we're going to bring ourselves a super team, because I think our true focus, is to bring back Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and at this point, D'Angelo Russell. That's my thinking. But once that does take place, once we have those guys, I think we're going to be in a firm position to find ourselves with a very, very good opportunity at turning that value into something rather valuable. And so that's what I want to say. I don't think $56 million stays on our books as those three players to start the season. And if it does, it ain't going to stay that way for long. My thing is, I don't want to have any mid-season trades that I'm expecting to have happen. I want to have a year full of continuity. That's one of my wishes for this team this year. We've been waiting on mid-season trades, and it throws off what it is we're ultimately going to be. 2-3 years in a row, we expected to make changes. Let's learn from that. Because at the end of the day, we want our team to be what it is going to be the whole year. That's what benefits a lot of these teams that keep on coming back to the highest points in the playoffs. It's the fact that they have that continuity in place every single year. They move a player around, maybe 2, maybe 3, but they're not switching up their main pieces. Those guys know each other, they're on a string, and all of that is what caters to these teams like Celtics and the teams like Denver being in a position to be where they are. Miami, they don't make any changes. These are the same teams that go into training camp with every year. And so as I say to you guys, that's what I want for my team this season. Anthony Davis and LeBron James haven't really had that from year to year with the team surrounding them. That's necessary. We need that continuity. We need to keep that continuity for the duration of the time they're going to be here. And with that being said, we're going to add some new pieces. But let's have that training camp. Let's at least be in place with the intention of having that team together once training camp begins. That's what I hope. That's what I hope. I think that's the best way for us right now. A team that just went to the Western Conference Finals, we need to start this year knowing who we're going to be by the end of the year. You know, having that identity at the start of this training camp. You know what I'm saying? Rather than trying to find it after a trade is made. So that's my thought on the situation there. Los Angeles Lakers, like I said to you guys yesterday, we're looking at Nick Smith, looking at several other players in that range that ultimately kind of fit that mold. Point guard, Kobe Buffkin. I saw CBS, I believe it was CBS, had us getting Kobe Buffkin, but I don't know if I really want to follow them. See, here's the year. This is the year for me where I want to know if it makes sense to follow consensus in regards to these draft picks and where they're married to be. Like, for example, Anthony Black is already a Wizard if you ask most people. Even though the Wizards have the 8th pick in the draft, it's almost like a foregone conclusion that he's going to end up there. I don't know if that should be trusted anymore or not. That's where I'm at. I'm hoping to gain that bit of knowledge this go round, because there's so much that I'm looking at and I'm saying, do I look at CBS like they crazy for having certain players drafted above other players and we know dang well that's not what it should be? Or is that for which I think it should be flawed in and of itself, and I shouldn't care nothing about the rankings that I've been seeing where everybody follows everybody else and slots these players where they ultimately end up every time you look at a mock draft? My question is, if we could take that and use that model to understand whether or not either we should trust these mock drafts or whether we should ignore them and kind of lean into those who try to go against those mock drafts. Because with a year like this, I'm telling you, you would think some of these players are already on these teams as much as you see these dudes mocked to the same place over and over again. So that's what it is. I think what I'm looking to find out is if that data should be trusted anymore. And maybe that's not a perfect model from year to year, but that's what I'm looking to find out. So yeah, that's what I'm telling you guys. I think for the Lakers, I'm finding out about more players that are coming around. Tracy Jackson Davis, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly, but he's a new guy that's starting to emerge, to my understanding, new from my understanding anyway. He's been around making noise, but he's starting to rise up in value in regards to his trade expectancy, draft expectancy. So that's somebody I'm paying attention to. Tracy Jackson Davis, I believe is his name. Not sure about that exactly. But Ben Shepherd is another one we've talked about. Pretty excited about what it is he can do. And man, it was another guy. It was another dude. that Coach Spinella was mentioning yesterday. I wish I remembered his name, but he's a Caucasian center. God, I don't know this dude's name. I only heard of him that one time last night when I was watching his content. But I assure you, this dude, he has, and I don't want to sound corny when I say this, but Jokic in him in a sense that he's looking to run your offense from the center position at like 7'2". You know what I mean? And when you underestimate what a guy like that can do, all I think of is Jokic. Like Jokic was drafted, the Lakers passed up on Jokic. We could have drafted him the year we drafted Juju. You know, that kind of thing. I just think it makes a lot of sense now to really legitimately wonder if we should be passing up on people who can facilitate at the center position. You know, people who can actually set up the offense who don't play point guard. Because a lot of times you end up running into these guys like Keontae George, you know, Bradley Beal, whoever, who are fantastic guards that you're going to have to pay trillions of dollars to, but you're not going to be able to afford to get a real point guard that's actually going to set up your offense. You can't afford, to pay for these dudes because you put all your money into other positions that ultimately do these things. So it's like if I can find a center like Draymond Green or a guy like Jokic, who else I come to mind that does this? Joakim Noah was great at that. Obviously, the boys in Sacramento back in the day, Vlade and Chris Webber were amazing at that. If you can find these dudes, big guys that can facilitate, who aren't afraid to shoot the ball, it's very important, who can stretch the floor, at least provide this threat of stretching the floor. If you can put them dudes on your team, I think there's a legitimate chance that you'll be able to build properly. Even if they're not the main player, if they're a backup guy who can do what that guy can do, look out, man. Look out. Because that'll allow you an opportunity to provide yourself more shot makers that don't necessarily provide that continuity. And this dude in a different position can make them more useful by getting them the ball in rhythm. So it's like, yo, give me the Scotty Barnes. Give me those guys. If they big, they play the power forward, they look to pass, make them a part of this team. Kobe Brown, I believe, has that skill set. It's a few of them. You just like those players that play traditional center, traditional power forward, who can set your offense up. So that's what I want to say. I wish I knew this guy's name. I'm pretty damn certain if he doesn't get drafted, he will be welcomed in. A 7-foot center. And I don't have no idea what his name is. Absolutely no idea, and it's bothering the hell out of me. But I only heard of him once, but I know exactly what his game is. I know his name when I see it. And that's about how much as I can give it. But that's the point. You start to see who these prospects are. You realize that there's so much to learn about them. But eventually, because of how good they are, you know that you will know who they are. And that's the most important thing. You know that this is going to be one of the last times I don't know who that dude is, because he's about to make a name for himself. And that is what I'm here to tell y'all. So, yeah, man. Hopefully the Lakers have him already on their wish list. And to be honest with you, there's not too many centers in this draft. I know of 4 or 5 centers, actual centers in this draft, and he happens to be one of them. So the idea of him getting drafted is pretty certain, if you ask me. I think he's going to be drafted in the second round, most definitely. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking for a center and you watch any footage of what it is that I saw, this dude, you need to draft him. Just like I said about Kobe Brown, he's way better than what they're telling you he is. You need to draft him. Maybe he didn't go to the school that, you know what I mean? But trust me, you need to draft that dude. So that's what I'm saying about him. It's a guy by the name of Andre Jackson that's picking up steam. I don't know much about his game at all. I know he does like attacking the basket quite a bit with floaters and one-arm floaters. Seems to be an aggressive player from UConn. And he's starting to get steam. And the reason why I bring him up is because I usually see him mocked in like the second round, late in the second round, where the Lakers at, like 47. And lately I've been seeing people putting him like, I saw one guy put him in like the 14th pick. Another person had him like mid 20s. And I'm like, he must be picking up steam in a real way. And I'm just not becoming as aware. So let me let everybody know that there's some dude named Andre Jackson that's starting to really pick up steam with draft boards in some really bizarre ways. Like, he's really jumping, y'all. And so if he happens to get taken early, at least you've heard me say his name, Andre Jackson. And what else? It's a couple players like that. You're like, wow, you really think so? And so that's just where I'm at with it. I'm excited about this draft, as you guys know. Ain't no question about it. It's about to be one of the fun ones. And, we're going to just try to pay as much attention to the possibility of trades, because that is what the overall sentiment will be, that these second and third picks, maybe the fourth, fifth, and sixth pick, seventh, eighth, all of these picks could be on the move. I read something this morning that said the Lakers are most definitely looking to trade 17. That's what was said. I don't know if it's true. But I think it's a good thing, so long as they're looking to do something with 17 that provides us the value of receiving another first-round pick. And instead, if I move 17, make sure I get 22 and player, and make sure that player makes sense. I know Buddy Yield is somebody they're talking about doing that for. If I can get picks out of the